Today's review comes with a warning. Be prepared to have a certain melody be stuck in your head until the end of time. Servus Freunde, my name is Kaze and Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind is a 1984 Japanese animated movie that is one of my absolute favorite films of all time. You might be wondering why exactly I'm reviewing this old movie now, and to be honest, it's a film so wonderful that it should be talked about anyway, regarding any specific reason. But I also reviewed the 1950 Jimmy Stewart American classic Harvey just a few weeks ago, and I said that I want to include some older films from time to time as well on my channel, specifically whenever there's a little lack of interesting enough recent releases, so that I keep providing you with at least 2 new reviews each week. But then I also realized that I uploaded the Harvey review just when we crossed the 7,000 subscribers mark. And now we are already at over 8,000, and I thought to myself that it would be a lovely idea to share a very personal film with you whenever we gain another 1,000 new subscribers. I'm well aware that those reviews won't make big numbers, but some of you might be interested, and I also regard them as little rewards to myself because it's a chance to revisit something that I truly love and share it with you. And if we keep on growing, someday there will be plenty of reviews on the channel of a huge variety of films that I hold very dear to my heart, and I think that's something I like to look forward to. But let's get into the film. Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind was released in 1984, and it marks the very beginning of one of the most beloved film studios of all time, Studio Ghibli. Though it wasn't founded until 1985, 1 year after the release of Nausicaä, with its first official production Castle in the Sky hitting theaters in 1986, this film is often considered to be the first Ghibli film. If the name Ghibli isn't familiar to you, I really hope some of its productions are. They created such masterpieces as Spirited Away, My Neighbor Totoro, or Princess Mononoke, which is one of the most important movies when it comes to making anime much more popular in the West. When you compare Princess Mononoke, which was released in 1997, to Nausicaä, you will spot a lot of similarities. Although Mononoke is full of green landscapes, lush meadows and dense forests, while the world of Nausicaä is determined by dry wastelands, poisonous mushroom woods and big insects, they both share a lot of themes with one another. Both are about the coexistence of man and nature, and while both are full-fledged epic adventure stories with a lot of spectacular visualized action, at their cores they are driven by a pacifistic anti-war message, which is wonderfully expressed by the character of Nausicaä herself. She's a young princess who lives in a distant future where the world has been destroyed by some catastrophic event, probably some kind of nuclear war. All that is left are big wastelands and an ever-growing poisonous forest, the so-called Sea of Corruption, home to huge insects and deadly spores that threaten to overtake the remaining lands. Meanwhile, 2 nations are at war, and Nausicaä's home, the small Valley of the Wind, is stuck in the middle. Nausicaä is a wonderful protagonist, strong, inspirational, caring and loving, brave and always concerned about the well-beings of her people as well as all living things. She's a character every little girl and boy can look up to, and creating strong characters is something that runs through the whole work of Hayao Miyazaki, a name that I haven't even mentioned up until now. While he didn't direct all of Ghibli's films, his name is nonetheless often synonymously used when talking about the studio. He's without a doubt not just one of Japan's greatest filmmakers, but one of cinema's greatest artists, period. He might be the director who made the most films that I ever gave a full 10 out of 10. He began working in anime in the 70s, and his first feature film-length film, 1979's The Castle of Cagliostro, which features the beloved thief Lupin III, is already a little masterpiece. His second film became Nausicaä, which he adapted from the first 2 volumes of the original manga, which he himself wrote and drew for the magazine Animage. Altogether, the manga was created in the time span between 1982 and 1994, containing 7 volumes and around 1,100 pages. So of course the story is far more complex and epic in manga form, with a lot more characters and a deeper focus on the world. Up until now I have never read it though, but after I just rewatched the film for this review, I thought what a wonderful treat it must be to delve into the manga, especially since it was created by Miyazaki himself. So I ordered the complete collection. And just look what a huge package this is. So far, I've only started with it, but I'm already completely in love. And the film is really taking the images as they appear on the pages and bringing them to life. Because the film version is an adaptation, there are also a lot of variations, of course. And speaking about variations, just to let you know, when the film was released in the US and in Europe for the first time, it was heavily truncated. It was renamed Warriors of the Wind. And they were just 24 minutes cut from the film, but the whole message and lore were completely changed and almost turned on their heads. Some of the film's most spiritual and unique moments were cut, and of course Miyazaki was absolutely furious and made certain that later releases of Ghibli movies were to be uncut. The original version was re-released in 2005, and you should never ever watch any other. If you're curious about the changes, you might want to check out the site movie-censorship.com for a comparison. And on that note, I always recommend watching anime in their original Japanese language with subtitles, because it's a very different experience from watching a dub. Just try it. The only exception is probably if you want to watch it with a child. But be aware that most Ghibli movies are way more complex and more ambivalent than a typical Disney film. Oftentimes there are more grey areas, not just clear-cut good versus evil. Movies like Nausicaä, Castle in the Sky or Princess Mononoke are also rather long for animated movies, and they feature more drastic imagery than one might expect. But they are also incredibly animated and wonderfully told stories, filled with details, and they are just so rewarding to watch. A 12-year-old child can love Nausicaä just as much as a 30-year-old adult. Hayao Miyazaki has created a little epic with Nausicaä. Already the first scenes radiate an enormous atmosphere and magic. You can see our lead protagonist on a trip to a mushroom forest. Equipped with a breathing mask and glider, she sets out on a journey of discovery, exploration, to get to know the world of insects. It's a post-apocalyptic world that has been destroyed by man hundreds or thousands of years ago in what is only handed down as the 7 Days of Fire, which already hints at the vast destructive power of mankind. Apparently, it only took 7 days to destroy the world, but all of that is left rather vague as a setup to the story of Nausicaä. This is a film that has always fascinated me, and as a matter of fact it was the very first movie that I ever reviewed. It was more or less exactly 10 years ago that I wrote a German review for it for an now offline film blog that I led with a bunch of good friends during our college days. And as someone who was always interested in sci-fi, in dystopian visions, in post-apocalyptic worlds, as a keen player of old RPGs like Fallout, the setting of Nausicaä played right to my heart. What Miyazaki and his team created here looks absolutely fantastic. And despite the prevailing destruction in the film, everything seems eerily alive and literally captivates you, which is of course perfectly fitting the character of our heroine Nausicaä, because she too sees the good, the beauty and the value in everything around her. My favorite moments are without a doubt the scenes in which she delves deeper into those mysterious poisonous forests, where everything around her is deadly and yet also filled with beauty and wonder. Equally as important as the visuals is the score. This marks the first collaboration with composer Joe Hisaishi. It was actually producer Isao Takahata who enlisted him. And if that name, Takahata, rings familiar, it is because he's also a renowned anime creator himself, responsible for works like Heidi or the Studio Ghibli films Grave of the Fireflies, Only Yesterday and more. Takahata passed away at the age of 82 last year. If I'm not mistaken, Hisaishi moved on to score all of Miyazaki's films, and his music is among the very best, alongside that of composers like John Williams, Ennio Morricone or Hans Zimmer. His music makes a significant contribution to the magic of this film. The soundtrack includes some very atmospheric and harmonic pieces. There are also very aggressive songs that sound extremely electronic and sometimes distorted, which unmistakably outs the movie as a product from the 80s. But I absolutely love that. I find it also remarkable how often there is no musical score, and the film let us just hear ambient sounds, dialogue or action, and then at the perfect moment the music sets in and makes your heart rate go up. Because Nausicaä features a lot of great action, the conflict between insects and humans, as well as the interpersonal conflicts offer a lot of room for amazing set pieces. There are battles fought not only with guns but also with swords, which plays to the film's medieval touch with kingdoms and princesses, as well as there are many flight sequences with big and small airships, which is very typical of Miyazaki, who is a huge enthusiast for everything involving flying. And of course all the insects look incredible, from the smallest ones to the giant omus that let you really feel their size. Omu means king of insects in Japanese, and their design is only repulsive for a second until you recognize their majestic, ancient nature. In the epic finale, which also typical for the adventure films of Miyazaki, goes on for a very long time without ever losing focus on the characters or story, you get to see a long-gone titan, which should be used to cleanse the earth from the insects, which is a war-mongering notion that of course can be the right path. That titan comes from the pen of Hideaki Anno, who later became famous for his anime Neon Genesis Evangelion. Of course there are also many quiet and thoughtful moments that radiate warmth and familiarity, giving viewers access to the world of Nausicaä and its characters. Overall, the film has 1-2 more brutal parts, but it can definitely be recommended to a younger audience, around the age of 10 I guess. Not least thanks to its young, super sympathetic and brave title character Nausicaä and the important message conveyed by the film. When it was released in 1984, it even got a recommendation from the WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, because of its anti-war and environmental focus. In a world that appears so threatening, a world where big nations have huge flying armies, our heroine gracefully flies through the air with just her glider, a glider that has no guns attached. Nausicaä is using weapons in the film, but mostly to defend or to carefully de-escalate a situation. She is someone who is very curious, who loves to explore and wants to understand the true meaning of the things around her. And she's never appalled by things like sickness or old age, it's the opposite. She remains loving, and there are some wonderful moments where the old people of her village are speaking with kind words about their princess and her loving nature. Of course, those are scenes that were also cut in the international version as well. If there's one critique, I would say that some of the stuff with the different kingdoms and what nation is doing what and why can get a bit convoluted in the finale, but it's really just a minor issue. Overall, Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind is an absolute delight and super rich film that should be seen by everybody, especially if you're into animation, adventure films, games like Final Fantasy or Fallout, or also Hollow Knight, which reminded me a lot of Ghibli aesthetics and especially Nausicaä in some of its segments. So in German I'd say, Nausicaä ist ein kleines, aber trotzdem wahres Epos, philosophisch, wunderschön und mit ganz viel Liebe zum Detail, erzählt uns Miyazaki eine mitreißende Geschichte für Jung und Alt. Absolut meisterhaft. I give Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind 10 out of 10. It's more like 9.6, but I don't do that. Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind. And also let me know what is your favorite film by Studio Ghibli. You can hit me up on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.